Okay, I'm going to try to make as rational of an argument as I can here. Although I realize in reality you can never truly separate emotions from logic, but I will do my best. And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to define a child as someone who has not yet gone through puberty. Okay, so first of all, the one thing I do totally agree with you on is that pedophiles don't choose to be pedophiles. I don't think anyone chooses who they are attracted to. I mean, me personally, I'm a heterosexual. Did I choose to be attracted to the ladies and not to the men? No, I never chose that. It's just the way that I am. So I agree with you on that people don't choose whom they find attractive. You mentioned this ideal utopian society where there would be no sexual boundaries of any kind. But I think certain sexual boundaries ought to exist, and for a good reason. For one thing, sex is quite possibly the most physically pleasurable thing that a human being can ever experience. Now, I don't have any hard data, but I would wager to say it's probably at least 10 times as good as any other physical experience, perhaps even more so. And as such, that makes it also a powerful tool for use in manipulation and control. There's an inherent power balance between adults and children. There's a reason why, for example, we don't consider it appropriate for a boss to have a sexual relationship with one of his employees. It's far too easy to coerce your employee into having sex, get them to give false consent because of the power imbalance that's there. And with children, this is even easier. Children want to please their parents, they want to do what's right in the eyes of the adults, and as such, it's almost impossible to know for sure that their consent is really their true consent, or whether they're just trying to please you as their parents or as these adults that they look up to and trust. It's impossible to escape the inherent power imbalance just because children don't have as much power as adults because they can't have it. They're not responsible enough, their minds are not mature enough to handle adult responsibilities, and so there's a necessary power imbalance there. And there's also a pleasure imbalance. Children might have an intellectual curiosity about sex, but they don't have a sex drive until they reach puberty. And so for an adult to have sex with a child is serving the interests of the adult far more than it is the child. You're basically using the child as a tool for your own pleasure. And if you don't see anything wrong with that, well, I don't know what to tell you. Then finally, you say that you don't seem to think that it matters whether the child understands what is going on or not. I'm going to have to disagree with you on that. Besides just physical harm, sex carries with it certain risks, such as STDs and pregnancy. Now, maybe with a child, pregnancy is not a consideration, but there's still the risk of sexually transmitted diseases. There's also the fact that sex has a very important symbolic value in the pair bonding relationship. Yes, that's the scientific term for it. We call it marriage, but in the animal world it's pair bonding. You can call it what you want to. It's not simply another pleasurable activity like, say, just eating chocolate ice cream. And I don't think in any society you're ever going to completely be able to remove this. There are, after all, animals that mate for life. And so I don't think you're ever going to be able to separate it from the symbolic significance and treat it as though you were just eating especially delicious ice cream. There's still going to be a difference there because of what it represents in the pair bonding relationship. So for those reasons, I think the decision to have sex is a serious one with serious potential consequences, and therefore one that a person should be able to fully comprehend before making. You wouldn't let a child sign the deed to a house, would you? You wouldn't let a child be the one to decide if they were going to undergo some risky experimental medical procedure, would you? Well, same thing with sex. If it has serious potential consequences, then we want people to be mature and responsible enough to handle that decision. And finally, you point out the fact that other primates don't seem to have sexual boundaries. Let me remind you that as human beings, one of the things that greatly separates us from other animals is that we have the capacity to reason. I doubt a chimpanzee is going to understand the meaning of a sexually transmitted disease, but a human being certainly will. And as reasoning beings, we don't necessarily follow the same rules that other animals do, that have their innate biological drives, and some of them have some partial capacity to reason, but nothing like what we have.